The Great Hall of Nexus Station was older than most civilizations in the galaxy. Its walls were made of black crystal that had been carved by the first spacefaring species over 50,000 years ago. Today, 12 alien races sat in a circle around the central platform. They called themselves the Galactic Council, and they believed they owned the stars. High Arbiter stood at the center. He was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like old stone. His species, had ruled this council for 3,000 years. They considered themselves the beings in existence, looked at the holographic display floating before him with disgust. "Fellow council members," he said, his voice echoing through the ancient chamber, "I present to you the evidence of humanity's crimes against galactic peace." The hologram showed a map of the galaxy. A small section near the outer edge was marked in red. This was Terran space. 200 years ago, it had been just one planet. Now it covered 37 star systems. 37 systems in 2 centuries, continued. No species has ever expanded this fast. It is aggressive. It is dangerous. It cannot be allowed to continue. Ambassador of the collective nodded her large head. Her species looked like tall insects with 4 arms and compound eyes. "The humans breed like parasites," she said. "They spread without control. They have no respect for the natural order." The other council members made sounds of agreement. None of them had ever spoken to a human. None of them had ever visited Earth or any Terran world. But they all agreed that humans were a problem. "I propose," said, raising his thin arms, "that we send an ultimatum to the Terran Empire. They will surrender 60% of their territory. They will close all their military academies. They will accept our oversight committee to ensure they become civilized. They will have 90 days to comply. And if they refuse, ask the representative from the hegemony." Smiled, it was not a friendly smile. "Then we will send our combined fleet, 8,000 warships from 9 member species. We will teach these children their place in the galaxy." The vote was unanimous. 3 days later, Fleet Admiral Park received the transmission aboard the TSS Sovereign. He was 58 years old, with gray hair cut short and a face that had seen too many battles. He had commanded Terran fleets for 30 years. He had fought pirates, rebels, and hostile alien species at the edge of known space, but he had never faced anything like this. He read the ultimatum 3 times, then he laughed. His first officer commander looked at him with concern. Was young, only 32, but he was one of the best tactical minds in the fleet. "Sir, is something funny?" Handed him the message. "They want us to give up everything we have built. They want to put us in chains and call it civilization." Read the message. His face went from confusion to anger. "They cannot be serious." "They are very serious," said. "They believe we are weak. They believe we will kneel because they have more ships." He stood up from his chair and walked to the window. Outside, the stars burned cold and bright. "Send this to Terra Prime. Maximum encryption. The Empress needs to see this immediately." On Terra Prime, the capital world of the Terran Empire, Empress sat in the war room deep beneath the Imperial Palace. She was 45 years old, with black hair and eyes that could be warm or cold depending on the situation. Right now, they were very cold. Around her sat the most powerful people in the empire. Defense Minister Minu was a large man with broad shoulders and hands that had once operated heavy mining equipment before he entered politics. Intelligence Chief was small and quiet, but her mind was sharper than any blade. Admiral Han, commander of the 4th Fleet, sat with his arms crossed, his face showing no emotion. "Play it again," said. The hologram showed High Arbiter's recorded message. His voice dripped with superiority. "You have 90 days to comply. Resistance will be met with overwhelming force. The Council has 8,000 warships ready to enforce our will. Submit now, and you may keep some small measure of dignity. Refuse, and you will be crushed like the insects you are." The message ended. Silence filled the room. Defense Minister Minu spoke first. 8,000 ships. That is more than our entire fleet combined. Numbers are not everything, Admiral said. I have studied Council military records. They have not fought a real war in 4,000 years. Their ships are old. Their tactics are older. Intelligence Chief nodded. My sources confirm this. The Council species have grown soft. They conquer through intimidation, not combat. When they face resistance, they simply wait until their enemies surrender from fear. Empress listened to all of them. Then she asked the question that would change galactic history. Defense Minister Minu, the Phoenix Protocol, how long until it is ready? Minu's eyes widened. Phoenix Protocol was the most classified project in the Empire. Even most of the military did not know it existed. Your Majesty, it is actually ahead of schedule. We can have full deployment in 60 days. Good, said. She stood up and everyone in the room stood with her. Admiral, I want you to begin moving the Fourth Fleet to Nu. Do it quietly. Hide them where no one can find them. Where would you like me to hide an entire fleet? Asked. Smiled. Nu has very deep oceans. The Admiral understood. He smiled back. Intelligence Chief continued, I want everything you have on Council military capabilities. Every ship, every weapon, every weakness. You will have it within the day, said. Defense Minister Minu, accelerate Phoenix Protocol. I want it ready in 45 days, not 60. It will be done. Turn to the communications officer standing by the door. Open a channel to Nexus Station. Maximum broadcast power. I want every species in the galaxy to hear this. The officer's hands shook as he worked the controls. Channel open, Your Majesty. Stepped forward. The holographic recorder captured her image. She knew that billions of beings across thousands of worlds would see this message. She wanted them to see it. She wanted them to remember it. High Arbiter, she said, her voice calm and steady. You have sent us your ultimatum. You have demanded that we surrender our worlds, our military, our freedom. You have threatened to crush us if we refuse. She paused. When she spoke again, her voice was ice. Come and take. She made a cutting gesture, and the transmission ended. In the war room, no one spoke. They all understood what had just happened. The Terran Empire had just declared war on the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. There was no going back now. Admiral received the Empress's response aboard the Sovereign. He watched it 3 times, just as he had watched the ultimatum. But this time, he did not laugh. He stood up and addressed his crew. All hands, prepare for war. We will show the galaxy what humanity can do. Across the Empire, on 1,000 worlds, the message spread. Humanity would not kneel. Humanity would not submit. The Council had expected fear. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous. They had awakened human pride. The Great Hall of Nexus Station erupted in laughter when they played Empress Response. Ambassador of the Collective clapped her 4 hands together in amusement. Her compound eyes glittered with mockery. Come and take, she repeated, making her voice high and squeaky like a child's. How adorable. The insects think they can fight back. High Arbiter allowed himself a thin smile. He had expected this reaction from the humans. Young species were always foolish. They did not understand how the galaxy worked. They did not understand that the Council always won. This defiance is meaningless, announced to the Assembly. It changes nothing. The combined armada will mobilize within the week. We will teach humanity the price of arrogance. The Council members nodded in agreement. They had done this many times before. Send a fleet, make threats. Watch the primitive species surrender. It was simple, it was clean, it always worked. Admiral of the Hegemony stood up. He was short and round, with thick blue skin and small black eyes. His species had not fought a real battle in over 2,000 years, but he wore many medals on his chest anyway. I volunteer the fleet to lead the assault. We will crush these humans within days. Your enthusiasm is appreciated, said. But this will be a combined operation. All 9 participating species will contribute ships. We want the galaxy to see our unity. We want them to see our strength. Within 10 days, the Armada was assembled. 8,000 warships gathered at the border of Terran space. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Battleships the size of small moons floated alongside sleek cruisers and countless support vessels. The Council broadcast images of this fleet to every corner of the galaxy. See, they said without words, see what happens to those who defy us. On the border world of Nu, Governor Lee watched the broadcast from her office. She was 39 years old, with short black hair and a scar on her left cheek from a factory accident in her youth. Before becoming governor, she had been a labor organizer. She knew how to stay calm when things looked bad. How long until they arrive? She asked her aide. 4 days at their current speed, the young man answered. His name was, and he looked terrified. Governor, we should begin evacuation immediately. Shook her head. We will evacuate the civilians, but this planet is not going to surrender. Stared at her. Governor, we have 12 patrol frigates. They have 8,000 warships. The math is not in our favor. The math is never the whole story, said. She walked to her window and looked out at the city below. Nu was home to 40 million people. They had built this world from nothing in just 80 years. They had turned a frozen rock into a thriving colony. She would not give it up without a fight. She opened a secure channel to Commander, who had been reassigned from the Sovereign to command the local defense forces. His young face appeared on her screen, looking tired but determined. Commander, she said, begin civilian evacuation to the southern bunker systems, but do not move your frigates. Keep them in orbit, visible to enemy sensors. Frowned. Governor, with respect, those frigates will be destroyed in minutes if we face that armada directly. I know, said. That is exactly what they are supposed to think. On the other side of Terran space, Intelligence Chief worked without sleep. Her office was buried deep beneath Terra Prime's capital city, surrounded by screens and holographic displays showing information from 1,000 sources. She had agents everywhere. Some were human diplomats stationed on neutral worlds. Some were alien merchants who sold information for credits. Some were small robots no bigger than insects, hiding in the walls of enemy ships. The picture they painted was remarkable. The Council species had not fought a real war in over 4,000 years. Their weapons were museum pieces. Their ships were designed for parades, not combat. Their soldiers were ceremonial guards who practiced with blunted weapons and never fired at living targets. Most importantly, their shields were designed to stop energy weapons, lasers, plasma bursts, particle beams. For thousands of years, every civilized species in the galaxy had used energy weapons. Humanity did not. Terran ships carried rail cannons, simple magnetic accelerators that launched chunks of metal at incredible speeds. The Council considered such weapons primitive, barbaric, uncivilized. Smiled as she compiled her report. The Council was about to learn that sometimes primitive worked best. She transmitted her findings to Empress and waited. The response came within minutes. Excellent work, the Empress said. This changes everything. Aboard the TSS Sovereign, Admiral Park received new orders. He read them carefully, then read them again to make sure he understood. Retreat, pull back all border fleets, give ground to the enemy, make them feel confident. Did not like retreating. Every instinct in his body told him to stand and fight, but he trusted the Empress. She had never led them wrong before. He called his captains together for a briefing. Their faces filled the screens around his command chair. We are pulling back, he announced. All ships will withdraw to secondary positions. We will let the Council Armada advance unopposed. The captains protested immediately. Admiral, we cannot abandon our people. They will think we are afraid. Our honor demands we fight." Raised his hand and they fell silent. This is not cowardice. This is strategy. The Council expects us to stand and die heroically at the border. They have prepared for that. They have not prepared for this. He brought up a tactical display showing Terran space. "We are going to let them come deep into our territory. We are going to let them feel confident. We are going to let them spread out and relax." He zoomed in on Nu. "And then we are going to show them what happens when you threaten humanity's children." The captains looked at each other. Slowly, understanding dawned on their faces. "This is a trap," one of them said. Smiled, "The biggest trap in galactic history." The Council armada crossed into Terran space 3 days later. They expected fierce resistance. They expected desperate attacks. They expected humanity to fight for every kilometer. Instead, they found nothing. The Terran border fleets had vanished. Scout ships found abandoned outposts and empty space stations. The Council commanders were confused at first. Then they began to celebrate. "The humans are running," Admiral announced triumphantly. "They have seen our might and fled in terror." High Arbiter received this news with satisfaction. This was how it always went. Inferior species made threats, saw the Council's power, and surrendered. Humanity was no different. "Continue the advance," he ordered. "Push toward their colony world of Nu. When we take it, the rest of their empire will collapse." The armada pushed forward, moving faster now. They stopped taking precautions. They stopped scanning for ambushes. Why would they? The humans had clearly given up. On Nu, Governor Lee watched the enemy fleet approach on her tactical display. She had sent away the last civilian transport 2 days ago. Now only military personnel remained on the planet, and they were not alone. She opened a channel to the 3 moons orbiting Nu. On the surface, they looked like ordinary moons, rocks in space, but beneath their crusts were military installations that had taken 50 years to build. "Moon bases, this is Governor Lee. Begin activation sequence. It is time to wake up." Deep beneath the surface of each moon, lights came on. Generators powered up. Weapons systems came online. Thousands of missile tubes and rail cannon batteries oriented toward the approaching enemy. Commander's voice came through her communicator. "Governor, they will be in range within 6 hours. My frigates are in position." "Good," said. "Remember, Commander, your job is not to fight. Your job is to survive long enough for the real fleet to arrive." "I understand," said. "We will give them a show they will never forget." Looked out her window one last time. The sky was clear and blue. Soon it would be filled with fire. She activated the planetary broadcast system. Every speaker on Nu came to life. Every radio, every personal device. "Citizens of Nu," she said, "today we face the greatest threat humanity has ever known. The Council believes we are weak. They believe we will kneel. They are wrong." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice rang with pride. "Today we show the galaxy who we are. Today we stand. Today we fight. And today we win." Across the planet, in underground bunkers and hidden shelters, the people of Nu cheered. They did not know what was coming. They did not know about the secret fleets. They did not know about Phoenix Protocol. But they believed in their Empress. They believed in their people. And they believed that humanity would never kneel. In space, the Council armada continued its advance, completely unaware that they were flying into the jaws of death. The Council armada arrived at Nu expecting surrender. 8,000 warships filled the sky above the small blue planet. They blocked out the stars. They cast shadows across entire continents. Admiral of the Hegemony stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Pride of. He looked at the planet below with contempt. This was supposed to be humanity's great colony world. It looked so small, so weak. "Scan for enemy vessels," he ordered. His sensor officer worked the controls. "Sir, I detect 12 small frigates in orbit. No other ships in the system." Laughed, 12 frigates against 8,000 ships. These humans truly are fools. He opened a channel to the planet below. Attention, human colony. This is Admiral of the Galactic Council Armada. You are surrounded and surrender immediately and we may show mercy. He expected begging. He expected tears. He expected the humans to fall on their knees and ask for forgiveness. Instead, music began playing across all frequencies. Frowned, what is that noise? His communications officer looked confused. Sir, they are broadcasting some kind of audio signal. It appears to be primitive vocal music. Across the Council fleet, alien commanders listened to the strange sounds coming from New. They heard drums beating in powerful rhythms. They heard human voices rising together in ancient songs of war. Songs that humans had sung before battles for thousands of years. Songs of courage. Songs of defiance. Songs of victory. Governor Lee stood in her command bunker, watching the enemy fleet on her screens. She had ordered the broadcast herself. If humanity was going to fight, they would fight with pride. Governor, Commander reported through the comm system, enemy fleet is holding position. They seem confused by our response. Good said, keep them confused and prepare for Phase 2. In the Council flagship, High Arbiter received reports of the strange music with annoyance. Enough of this foolishness, he said. Admiral, destroy those frigates and begin landing operations. Was happy to obey. All ships target the human vessels, fire at will. 8,000 ships turned their weapons toward Commander's 12 frigates, energy cannons charged, plasma weapons powered up. The frigates had no chance of survival against such overwhelming firepower. Then the moons woke up. New had 3 moons. For decades they had looked like ordinary rocks in space. Sensors showed nothing unusual. Surveys found nothing interesting. The Council had not bothered to scan them closely. Why would they? They were just moons. But they were not just moons. Massive doors opened across the surface of each moon. Hidden weapon platforms rose from beneath the rock. Thousands of rail cannon batteries oriented toward the enemy fleet. Missile tubes armed and ready. Admiral stared at his tactical display in disbelief. What is this? The moons fired. Rail cannon rounds traveled at a significant fraction of light speed. They were just chunks of metal. No explosives. No guidance systems. Just dense iron moving faster than anything the Council had ever seen. Council ships had shields designed to stop energy weapons. They could absorb laser fire for hours. They could deflect plasma bursts. They had never needed to stop solid projectiles because no civilized species used such primitive weapons. The first wave of rail cannon fire tore through the Council fleet like paper. Ships that had survived 1,000 years were ripped apart in seconds. The metal rounds punched through shields as if they were not there. They punched through armor. They punched through reactors. Explosions bloomed across the Council formation. Admiral screamed orders, but nobody could hear him over the chaos. His own ship shook as a round tore through the hull 3 decks below. And then the real surprise arrived. Space behind the Council fleet rippled and tore. Fold space portals opened like wounds in reality. Through them came the Terran Second Fleet under Admiral Park. 200 warships materialized in perfect formation, blocking the Council's retreat route. Each ship was painted black with gold stripes. Each ship carried the emblem of the Terran Empire. Each ship was already firing. All ships, announced calmly, engage the enemy, no mercy. The Council commanders panicked. Half of them ordered retreat. Half of them ordered attack. None of them expected what came next. The asteroid belt on the far side of the system shimmered. Cloaking devices deactivated. The Third Fleet under Vice Admiral Shin appeared from the rocks where they had been hiding for 3 days. Was 41 years old and had never lost a battle. She intended to keep that record. Third Fleet, fire all weapons. Target their largest ships first. Another wave of rail cannon fire slammed into the Council formation. More ships died. The survivors tried to scatter, but there was nowhere to go. Then the ocean of Nu began to boil. Admiral Hand's Fourth Fleet had been hiding beneath the waves for 2 weeks. 70 warships designed to operate underwater as well as in space. They had waited in the cold darkness of the ocean floor, engines silent, crews patient. Now they rose. Ships burst through the surface of the sea like ancient monsters waking from sleep. Water streamed off their hulls as they climbed toward space. Their weapons were already locked on enemy targets. Fourth Fleet reporting said, beginning attack run. In the Council flagship, High Arbiter watched his perfect armada being destroyed. 600 ships had already been lost in the first 2 minutes. More were dying every second. "This is impossible," he whispered. "They were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to be weak." "Sir," his aide shouted, "they have cut off all retreat routes. We cannot jump to fold space." Looked at his tactical display. The human had destroyed the fold space beacons that his fleet needed to escape. They had planned this. Every detail, every move. The Council had walked into a trap, and now the trap was closing. Commander's 12 frigates joined the attack. They were small ships, but every shot counted. Flew his vessel through the chaos, dodging debris and enemy fire with skill that made his crew gasp. "Commander," his weapons officer reported, "enemy battleship directly ahead." Smiled, "Lock all rail cannons, full power." The frigate fired. The enemy battleship, 10 times larger, tried to raise its shields. The shields stopped nothing. The rail cannon rounds punched through the hull and hit the reactor core. The battleship exploded in a ball of white fire. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out thousands of times. Terran ships were outnumbered 2 to 1, but they were faster, smarter, and their weapons actually worked against the enemy. Council ships fired laser after laser, but Terran armor was designed to absorb energy weapons. The damage was minimal. The Council had prepared for the war they expected. The Terrans had prepared for the war that actually came. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Sovereign, watching the destruction with grim satisfaction. He took no pleasure in killing. But these aliens had threatened his people. They had demanded surrender. They had called humanity insects. Now they were learning the truth. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "the enemy flagship is attempting to contact us." Nodded, "Put it through." High Arbiter's face appeared on the screen. He looked old and afraid. "Admiral, please, we surrender. Stop this slaughter." Looked at him for a long moment. He thought about the ultimatum. He thought about the threats. He thought about all the young species the Council had crushed over thousands of years. "You wanted to destroy us," said quietly. "You wanted to enslave our children. You wanted to erase our civilization." He leaned forward. "Your surrender is accepted. Order your ships to power down their weapons and lower their shields. Any ship that attempts to fight or flee will be destroyed." Hesitated. You will accept our surrender." "We are not like you," said. "We do not slaughter those who have surrendered, but make no mistake, Arbiter. This war is not over. It has only begun." The transmission ended. Across the battlefield, Council ships began powering down. Shields fell. Weapons went silent. The survivors drifted among the wreckage of their dead. Governor Lee watched from her bunker as victory became clear. She had not lost a single civilian. Her planet was safe. Her people were alive. She opened a channel to the fleet. "Admiral, this is Governor Lee. On behalf of Nu, thank you." His voice came back through the static. "The thanks belong to you, Governor. Your people stood strong when it mattered. Nu will never be forgotten." The Battle of Nu was over. 6,000 Council ships had been destroyed or captured. 2,000 had surrendered. The greatest armada in galactic history had been broken in less than 4 hours. And across the galaxy, every species that had ever lived under Council rule watched in disbelief. The humans had won. The wreckage of the Council fleet drifted through space around new, twisted metal, frozen bodies, the remains of ships that had been new when most human civilizations were still in their infancy. Now they were nothing but debris. Admiral Park looked at the battlefield and felt no joy. This was war. War was never something to celebrate, but it was sometimes necessary. "Status report," he ordered. His first officer checked the displays. "Sir, we have approximately 2,000 enemy ships in surrender status. Another 6,000 are destroyed or disabled. Our own losses are minimal. 47 ships damaged, 12 destroyed." Nodded, 12 ships, 12 crews, perhaps 3,000 Terran lives lost. It was a small number compared to the enemy casualties, but every life mattered. He would remember them all. "Begin boarding operations," he said. "I want those surrendered ships secured." On Terra Prime, Empress watched the battle data in real time. Her war cabinet sat around her in stunned silence. They had hoped for victory. They had not expected it to come so easily. Beside her sat Crown Princess. She was only 17 years old, but her mother believed in teaching lessons early, needed to understand what leadership meant. She needed to understand the weight of command. "Is it over?" asked quietly. "The battle is over," replied, "but the war has just begun. Watch, daughter, learn. Today we see what victory costs." Turned back to the screens. She watched as Terran Marines boarded enemy vessels. She watched as alien soldiers surrendered without a fight. She watched as the greatest military force in the galaxy collapsed in a single afternoon. She would never forget this day. Aboard the Council flagship, Colonel O led the boarding party. He was 43 years old, with a shaved head and scars on his arms from 20 years of combat. He had fought in the Outer Rim against pirates. He had led ground assaults on hostile alien worlds. But this was his first time boarding an enemy capital ship. His Marines moved through the corridors in perfect formation. Their armor was black and featureless. Their weapons were ready. They expected resistance. They found something else. The Council soldiers were hiding. They cowered in corners and behind doors. When the Marines found them, they threw down their weapons immediately and raised their hands. "Please," one of them begged. His species was called. He looked like a giant insect with 4 arms and compound eyes. But right now he just looked terrified. "Please do not kill us. We surrender." Stared at him. This was supposed to be an elite guard, the best soldiers the Council had to offer, and they were surrendering without firing a single shot. "Secure them," he ordered his Marines. "No harm, they are prisoners of war." As they moved deeper into the ship, began to understand. The Council species had not fought a real war in thousands of years. Their soldiers were ceremonial. Their training was ceremonial. They had never fired weapons at living targets. They had never been fired upon. Terran Marines trained differently. Every Marine spent years learning to fight. Every Marine had faced live combat simulations. Every Marine was prepared to die. The Council was not prepared for anything. They found High Arbiter in the command center, surrounded by his senior officers. The old alien looked at with something between fear and disbelief. "You are the enemy commander?" asked. "I am Colonel O, Terran Imperial Marines," replied. "You and your officers are now prisoners of the Terran Empire." Shoulders slumped. How did you defeat us so easily? We had 8,000 ships. We had the greatest armada in history." Looked at him for a long moment. "You had ships," he said finally. "We had warriors. There is a difference." He ordered his Marines to secure the prisoners and contacted Admiral. The flagship was under Terran control. The battle was truly over. Back on Terra Prime, Intelligence Chief received reports from every captured vessel. Her analysts worked through the data as fast as it arrived. What they found changed everything. The Council was built on lies. For thousands of years, The Council had claimed to be the guardians of galactic peace. They had claimed to protect weaker species from danger. They had claimed to bring civilization to primitive worlds. The truth was different. The Council had been strip-mining member worlds for resources. They had been keeping younger species oppressed and underdeveloped. They had been hoarding technology and knowledge while their subjects lived in poverty. Brought her findings to Empress. The Empress read the reports with growing anger. "They called us barbaric," said quietly. "They called us a threat to peace, but they have been the true monsters all along." "Yes, Your Majesty," agreed. "And now we have proof. Thousands of documents, financial records, military orders, evidence of crimes spanning." Stood and walked to her window. Outside, the lights of the capital city glowed in the darkness. Millions of people going about their lives, trusting their leaders to protect them. "This changes our strategy," said. "We are not fighting for territory. We are not fighting for revenge. We are fighting for liberation." She turned back to, "Prepare a broadcast. I want every world in the galaxy to see what the Council has been doing. I want them to know the truth." Admiral received new orders 2 days after the battle. He read them on the bridge of the Sovereign, surrounded by his senior officers. "We are advancing," he announced. "Not to conquer, not to destroy, we are advancing to liberate." His officers exchanged glances. Vice Admiral Shin spoke first. "Sir, can you explain?" Brought up a map of Council space. "The Council has been oppressing dozens of species for thousands of years. They take resources, they suppress technology, they keep their subjects weak and afraid." He highlighted several star systems. "These worlds are suffering. Their people have been calling for help for centuries. No one listened." He looked at his officers with steel in his eyes. "Now we listen. Now we answer." The Terran fleet divided into task forces. Each force had a specific mission. Some would secure enemy military installations. Some would protect trade routes. Some would bring humanitarian aid to worlds that had been stripped bare by Council exploitation. Commander was given command of a small escort group assigned to the aid convoy. It was not a glorious assignment, but understood its importance. The people they were going to help had never seen aliens come to save them. They had only seen aliens come to take. This time would be different. Governor Lee was promoted to sector administrator. Her new job was to coordinate reconstruction efforts across the newly liberated territories. It was an enormous task, but she was ready for it. "We need food," she told her planning staff. "Medicine, construction materials, teachers, engineers. These people have been everything for generations. We need to give them hope." Her aide looked at the reports on his screen. "Administrator, the scale of this is massive. We are talking about dozens of worlds, billions of people." Smiled. "Then we had better get started." Across Council space, the news of new spread like wildfire. Species that had lived under Council rule watched in disbelief as the impossible happened. The Council had been defeated. Their armada was gone, and the humans were coming. Some feared the humans. They had been told all their lives that humans were dangerous savages. They expected conquest and destruction. Instead, they saw Terran ships arriving with food and medicine. They saw human soldiers protecting civilians from the chaos. They saw representatives of the Terran Empire offering help with no conditions attached. On one world, a young member of an oppressed species approached a Terran Marine. The alien was small and thin, clearly malnourished. He looked up at the Marine with wide eyes. "Why," he asked, "why are you helping us? We are nothing to you." The Marine knelt down to meet the alien's eyes. His name was Park, and he was 24 years old. He had joined the Marines because he wanted to protect people. "You are not nothing," said gently. "You are people, and people deserve to be free." The alien stared at him for a long moment. Then tears began to flow from his strange eyes. He had never heard those words before. On Terra Prime, Empress received reports of these encounters every day. She read them all. Each story reminded her why they were fighting. This was not about power. This was not about revenge. This was about justice. She called Crown Princess to her office. The young woman entered and bowed respectfully. "You wanted to see me, mother." Gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Sit, daughter. We need to talk about the future." Sat down, curious. "What future?" Leaned forward. "When this war is over, the galaxy will need to change. The Council failed because it was built on domination. Whatever comes next must be built on equality." She looked at her daughter with pride. "You will help build it." His eyes widened. "Me. You are the future of our empire," said, "and soon you will be the future of the galaxy. Are you ready?" Thought about everything she had seen. The battle, the liberation, the faces of people who had never known freedom until now. "Yes," she said firmly, "I am ready." Smiled. "Good, then let us begin." The news of the Council's defeat spread faster than any ship could travel. Within weeks, every world in the galaxy knew what had happened at Nu. The reactions were not what the Council survivors expected. 3 member species immediately sued for peace. Their governments sent urgent messages to Terra Prime, desperate to separate themselves from the disaster. They offered trade agreements, territory, information, anything to avoid the fate of the Armada. Empress read their offers with cold eyes. They were happy to participate when they thought we would lose. Now they want to be our friends. Intelligence Chief nodded. "They are afraid. The Dominion is already collapsing. Their people have learned the truth about the invincible fleet." Stood and walked to the strategic display that filled one wall of her office. The map showed Council space in chaos. Red markers indicated civil unrest. Yellow markers showed economic collapse. Blue markers marked systems where the population was calling for Terran intervention. "The Council held its members together through fear," said. "Now that fear is gone, they are falling apart." Defense Minister Minu entered the room with a data pad. "Your Majesty, Admiral reports that the Second Fleet has entered the home system. There was no resistance. Their remaining military forces surrendered before we even arrived." Felt no satisfaction at this news. They had been her enemies, but she took no pleasure in their suffering. "What is the situation on the ground?" "Chaotic," Minu admitted. "Their government has collapsed. Different factions are fighting for control. The civilian population is caught in the middle." "Send aid convoys," ordered. "Protect the civilians. Do not take sides in their internal conflicts but prevent massacres." "Yes, Your Majesty." On the Admiral Park watched from orbit as transport ships descended to the surface. Each ship carried food, medicine, and humanitarian workers. It was strange to be helping the people who had wanted to destroy humanity just weeks ago. Commander stood beside him on the bridge. The young officer had proven himself at Nu, had promoted him to captain of his own ship. "Sir," said, "I have to ask, why are we helping them? They tried to wipe us out." Was silent for a moment. "When I was young, my father told me something I never forgot. He said that the measure of a civilization is how it treats its defeated enemies." He looked at the planet below. "The Council treated its enemies with cruelty. That is why they are falling apart. We will be different." Considered this. "We show mercy because we are strong enough to afford it." "Exactly," said. "The weak must be cruel. The strong can choose to be kind." In the ruins of the Council's political center, other species began to speak openly for the first time in centuries. Young species that had been oppressed and silenced found their voices. They demanded freedom. They demanded justice. And they looked to humanity for help. On a world called Prime, a species called that had been Council subjects for over 3,000 years. They were small beings with fur and large ears. The Council had used them as servants and laborers. They had never been allowed to develop their own technology or culture. Now, for the first time, a leader stood in public and spoke to her people. "For 3,000 years we bowed to the council," she said. Her name was Myra, and she was barely older than a child by her species standards, but she had courage that surprised everyone. "They told us we were inferior. They told us we needed their guidance. They lied." The crowd before her grew larger. Thousands had gathered to hear her words. "The humans came to our world," Myra continued. "They did not come as conquerors, they came as friends. They offered food to our hungry, medicine to our sick, hope to our hopeless." Her voice rose with emotion. "They showed us what the galaxy can be when it is not ruled by fear." Across the crowd, they began to cheer. It was the first time many of them had ever cheered for anything. Intelligence Chief collected stories like this from across the former Council territories. Each story was more remarkable than the last. Species that had been enemies were talking for the first time. Trade routes that had been restricted for centuries were opening. Information that had been hoarded by the Council was being shared freely. She brought these reports to the Empress during their daily briefing. "The galaxy is transforming," said. "Our actions at Nu did more than win a battle. They showed everyone that the Council could be defeated. They showed everyone that change was possible." Reviewed the data with careful attention, and the remaining Council loyalists. "Isolated and weakening," replied. "High Arbiter is still in our custody. The other Council leaders are either hiding or trying to negotiate their way out of prosecution." She paused. "There are some who want us to execute them publicly." "No," said firmly. "We will not become what they were. There will be trials, there will be justice, but there will not be vengeance." Nodded, she had expected this answer. The Empress was many things, but she was not cruel. Governor Lee, now sector administrator, worked without rest in the months following the victory. Her teams established aid stations on 47 worlds. They built schools on planets where education had been forbidden. They trained doctors on worlds where medicine had been. It was exhausting work, but had never felt more alive. On one of her inspection tours, she visited a refugee camp on a world called Torais. The previous government had collapsed, and millions of people had been displaced. Terran aid workers were doing their best to help, but resources were limited. A young approached her. He was tall and thin, with blue skin and silver eyes. He looked nervous but determined. "You are the human administrator?" he asked. "I am," said. "What can I do for you?" The young alien hesitated. "I wanted to thank you. Before your people came, my family was starving. The Council took everything we had. Now—" He looked around at the aid station, the medical tents, the food distribution center. "Now we have hope." Felt her eyes grow wet. She had read thousands of reports about the suffering in former Council space, but seeing it in person was different. "What is your name?" she asked. "Cal," he said. "Cal," repeated. "Your people have suffered for a long time, but that time is over now. We are here to help, and we will not leave until you can stand on your own." Cal stared at her. Why do you help us? We are strangers to you." Smiled, "Because that is what humanity does. We help, we build, we stand together." She put her hand on his shoulder. "And now you are not strangers anymore. You are our friends." Back on Terra Prime, Crown Princess began her new role. Her mother had appointed her as liaison to the liberated species. Every day, she met with representatives from dozens of worlds. She listened to their stories. She heard their needs. She learned what it meant to lead. It was not easy. Many of the alien delegates did not trust humans. They had been betrayed too many times by the Council. They expected humanity to eventually show its true colors. Work to prove them wrong. "I know you have suffered," she told a delegation from the worlds. They had been among the Council's most loyal soldiers. Now they were pariahs, hated by everyone. "I know you are afraid, but the Terran Empire does not believe in collective punishment. You are not responsible for the crimes of your leaders." The ambassador, a veteran named, looked at her with suspicion. Your people destroyed our fleet, killed our soldiers. Why should we believe you mean us no harm? Met his gaze without flinching. Your fleet came to destroy us. Our soldiers defended their homes. That is war. She leaned forward. But the war is over. What matters now is what we build together. You can choose to hold on to hate, or you can choose to help create something better. Was silent for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. You are young, but you speak with wisdom beyond your years. I have good teachers, said. The negotiations continued for weeks. Slowly, trust began to build. They agreed to share intelligence about remaining Council loyalist cells. In exchange, the Terran Empire provided humanitarian aid to colony worlds that were facing famine. It was the first of many such agreements. Admiral received orders to advance toward Nexus Station itself. The ancient structure had been the heart of Council power for 50,000 years. Taking it would be more than a military victory. It would be a symbol. He gathered his fleet commanders for a briefing. Vice Admiral Shin, Admiral Han, Captain Colonel O leading the Marine detachment. This is it, said. Nexus Station is the last major Council stronghold. When it falls, the war is effectively over. What resistance do we expect? Asked. Unknown, admitted. Intelligence suggests their remaining forces are minimal, but Nexus Station has defenses that are 50,000 years old. We do not know all their capabilities. Crossed his arms. Then we hit them hard and fast, no time to prepare. Nodded. That is the plan. We jump in, secure the station, and protect the civilian population. There are still thousands of diplomats and workers living there. They are not our enemies. What about the Council leaders? Asked. Any we find will be detained for trial. No executions, no torture. We do this right. Looked at each of his officers. The galaxy is watching. They need to see that humans are better than the Council ever was. The officers nodded. They understood. 3 days later, the Terran fleet appeared in the Nexus system. Alarms blared across the ancient station. Panic spread through its corridors. The handful of remaining Council defenders prepared for a last stand. It never came. As the Terran ships approached, Nexus Station's defense systems went offline one by one. Not destroyed, simply deactivated. Someone was shutting them down from inside. Frowned at his tactical display. What is happening? The answer came through the communication system. A voice spoke in perfect Terran standard. Admiral, this is Nexus Station Administrator Sira of the Hegemony. Our defense systems are standing down. We have opened our docking bays. We surrender unconditionally. Exchanged glances with his officers. Why? Administrator Sira's voice was tired. Because the war is over, because the Council is finished, because continuing to fight will only cause more death. There was a pause. And because you have shown the galaxy that there is a better way, we wish to be part of it. Considered this. It could be a trap, but every instinct told him it was genuine. All ships hold position. Marines prepare for boarding, but weapons on stun. Let us see if they mean what they say. The boarding went smoothly. The station's inhabitants cooperated fully. There were no incidents, no resistance. Just thousands of beings who were tired of war and ready for something new. Admiral walked through the great hall of Nexus Station. This was where the ultimatum had been issued. This was where the Council had laughed at humanity. Now it was silent and empty, waiting for what would come next. He sent a message to Terra Prime, 3 words. Nexus is ours. The war was over. The real work was about to begin.